Greetings, thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times for Wednesday, October 27, 2021. For today's editorial, Populist soundbites, no solution to fuel price woes. The constant increases in fuel prices in the Philippines, which have gone up every week for the past 2 months, are obviously a source of grave concern for the government and the public. This has been a boon of sorts for political candidates who have used the crisis to signal their public interest virtues by calling for, among other things, the suspension of the excise tax on fuel to ease the burden of high prices. These calls are at best unproductive, perhaps even irresponsible, and should be ignored. So far, presidential aspirants Senator Panfilo Lacson, former Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., Vice President Leni Robredo, and Manila Mayor Francisco Esco Moreno Domagoso have all made calls for suspending the fuel tax and related tax reductions or other relief. Labor leader Leodegario Caloyodi de Guzman, the presidential candidate of the Partido Lakas ng Masa or PLM, has said that suspending the excise tax would not help and has cancelled instead for even more sweeping changes in the form of re-regulating the oil industry. Even Energy Secretary Alfonso Cosi, who is not running for office but serves a bit of campaign role as head of the PDP Laban party, joined the bandwagon by also calling for a suspension of the excise tax. The latter's statement earned a bit of a rebuke from the Department of Finance or DOF, which issued a memorandum that pointed out the government would incur a revenue loss of up to 131.4 billion pesos for 2022 if the fuel excise tax was suspended, and urging that the suggestion be appropriately studied before being seriously considered. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III also explained, and not for the first time, that the current excise tax law in no way transfers the constitutional power of the purse from Congress to the Department of Energy, and that any adjustment not already provided for in the law would require new legislation. Currently, the excise tax on fuel is set at 10 pesos per liter for gasoline, 6 pesos per liter for diesel, and 5 pesos per liter for kerosene. The excise tax is supposed to be inflation adjusted annually, but the law includes a provision for suspending an annual increase, not the tax itself, if oil prices are above a certain threshold for a period of 3 months. The suspension of the scheduled increase, which has happened before, might happen again if oil prices remain at their current levels through the end of the year. But as dire as the situation may be portrayed at the moment, it is nowhere near the level where the safeguard would be implemented. Candidate de Guzman is correct in one respect. The problem of high fuel prices is not caused by the fuel excise tax and would not be solved by suspending it. The tax is assessed on a volume basis and is not based on price, and thus would be the same no matter what the underlying oil prices are. It is conceivable and perhaps probable that even after a hypothetical tax suspension were to be applied, oil prices would continue to rise and cancel out the short-term relief. The DOF also made a critical point in detailing the potential revenue loss to the government. After almost 2 years of the coronavirus pandemic, government finances are in a delicate condition. Foregoing any revenue at all, especially the substantial amount that would be lost if the fuel excise tax is suspended, is simply out of the question unless the people are willing to forego a considerable amount of services and support in exchange for it, which is unlikely. High fuel prices are indeed a most unwelcome source of economic stress for the country, but there are unfortunately not many solutions that do not carry some even more serious unintended consequences. Simply calling for a suspension of the excise tax without thoroughly understanding the issue is unwise and dangerously misleading. As an alternative, the government could consider some form of short-term relief for those most adversely affected by high fuel prices, primarily the transport sector, which would help to alleviate the burden to some degree. And that's the editorial for Wednesday, October 27, 2021. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to its digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and listen to the Voice of the Times.